I think new builds are the only viable option. Best time to kind of act is in the next 100 days. All the developers we're dealing with now are throwing incentives at it left, right and centre. The time to act is always now. 40 million people in Australia by 2050. Is there 40 million houses for them right now? Hell no.
Do you think first home buyers should wait?
So should they sit on their hands or should they progress? Do I have to answer?
With the latest budget announcement, do you think first home buyers should wait?
Wait's always an interesting thing. Saw an amazing report that basically said the best time to kind of act is in the next 100 days. If you go past the 100 days, when everyone kind of understands that this is the new normal, things are going to grow again. But in that next 100 days, when sellers are getting scared, they're panic selling, they're concerned about what the market's going to do. They're desperate because they've planned to downsize. They've bought their new house already. In that time frame, that's when you get the best deals. All the developers we're dealing with now are throwing incentives at it left, right and centre. But if we genuinely believe that based on a new tax, the housing market is going to go down forever, then we have to ask ourselves why. If this is our new normal, does that mean the housing crisis is over? Just because investors are less interested? Magically, does that mean that every renter who's struggling to find occupancy can magically come up with a deposit and now afford a mortgage? Or does it mean there's tighter requirements for renters, which means they're facing homelessness and housing supply needs to increase? And as a result, the housing crisis getting out of whack, there's going to be more properties needed. The time to act is always now. Since the 60s and 70s and 30s, everyone's been saying the market is going to flatten out. It's going to collapse. But let's just see what history's taught us. Whatever synthetic thing has caused any market downturn, every economic philosophy comes down to demand and supply. The demand is still there. Supply is still weak. So when is the best time to get involved? It's now. And with negative gearing going away for existing dwellings, it's the time now to get into new dwellings. Because guess what? It's lower stamp duty anyway. Guess what? There's bigger upside because you have the development benefit of that new dwelling. Is it the best time to invest or is it the best time to sit in your hands? I want you to ask every generation before us and then come back to your future self and ask yourself, why didn't I already know? My parents, grandparents, and their parents have been telling them every single time, I wish I bought earlier. What do you think is going to change? A population of 27 million people, you don't think it's going to grow? I think expectations are showing forecasts of 40 million people in Australia by 2050. Is there 40 million houses for them right now? Hell no. And are the government keeping up with their expectations of building? Hell no. So should they sit on their hands or should they progress? Do I have to answer?
People are saying that first home buyers are being priced out of houses and quietly being pushed into apartments. Do you think that's a bad thing? What are your thoughts on that?
Absolutely. It's funny. There was a world where the government put in place this thing of the first home buyer guarantee scheme, where if you have a 5% deposit, they will back the other 15% and eradicate the LMI, basically guarantee that component of the loan. What did they think was going to happen? A first home buyer or an emerging Australian is only going to have so much of a 5%. So if the incentive is to get them in that market sooner, they're going to be targeting your $800,000, $900,000 to $1 million mark. I know those of you watching outside of Australia probably going $1 million, and these guys crazy, but that's just standard and what Australia has become. So these people brought together their 25 grand to get them their $1 million house plus their stamp duty. They put together, their $10,000 and got them a $500,000 studio. But what happened is this whole new market emerged and competed against the existing market, which is the entry-level market. The people have been saving for 5-10 years to save their 10%, 20% deposit plus stamp duty. So there's one area of the market that was absolutely slapped around, that went from $1 million sale price to $1.6 million sale price. I had a friend of mine go to an auction for a rundown piece of crap in Seven Hills and pay 1.7 for a property that would have otherwise gone for $950, $980. What did they think was going to happen? And then where do we go from there? We go to apartments, we go to townhouses, we go to duplexes. But the thing is, the same thing applies. There are duplexes that we sold for $860 back in the day that are now on the market for $1.1 3 months later. The same thing applies for Queensland just as a whole city. They offered a $30,000 rebate for the first home buyer's grant plus no stamp duty in a market that had an average price of $600 to $700. Surprise, surprise. The market went up by 17% year on year. 17% year on year. The prime example is a place that we used to sell up in Pimpama. We sold house and land packages for $430, which everyone lifted their nose at. Pimpama was in the ass crack of nowhere, according to them, between Gold Coast and Brisbane. Those same places, people are falling over themselves for at 1.3, 1.4. It's been a year. 1 year since that happened. And it's keep happening. Developers aren't even putting all their land lots out because they're waiting for that next 14%, 17%. They're selling just enough to capitalize on the compound growth. You're paying their mortgage payments while they're accelerating their profit on the last of 30 lots. It's incredible what's happening. So yes, they're being pushed to apartments for now, but they're going up too. Ladies and gentlemen, this whole housing crisis has focused on apartments and townhouses by the New South Wales Premier. But guess what? Apartment developers are not making money. There's about $200,000 in fees to government for every place being built. Yet, the capital growth on these apartments have not gone up in line for the developer to make money. So, thank you so much, Mr. Minns, for breaking through the red tape of rezoning. But if the developers can't make money on it, what's the incentive? Why the hell would they make it happen? So what's happening? Less supply. What's occurring? Greater demand. For these same places, prices are rising, and unfortunately, they're going to get priced out of that too. The only way forward is to increase supply. There is no other way around it. It is sad, but that is the truth for young Australians, first home buying Australians, which by the way are not always young Australians. There's also people who are trying to get their first house after a divorce, after a medical issue, after repatriating from a different country, after coming back from military service. There are so many people who are buying their first home into their 50s and 40s. Take my word, we deal with them every day. The government isn't helping. We can, but there are different ways to approach it too. You may not buy your dream house straight away. You may need to go to the regional areas where we're selling things at $730, $740 in the Hunter region, $680 in Muswellbrook, $720 in Tamworth. There's opportunities all over Melbourne, the sub 700 with a lower yield, but unfortunately they got their tax problems as well. But yes, they are being pushed to apartments and townhouses, but I would say more importantly, they are being pushed out of New South Wales into regional areas as well as different states where there are currently more opportunities.
And with this budget, do you think new builds are still a viable option?
I think new builds are the only viable option. Negative gearing. Let us take a few seconds to understand what negative gearing is. I buy a house for $1 million. My mortgage on that, let's assume it's $1 million, right? So 6% is a really good interest rate in today's market, $60,000. $60,000 a year is $5,000 a month. which is $1,250 or whatever it is a week. How many properties on the rental sphere do you see at $125 or $1,250 a week? Not many, right? In fact, that's only the upper tier of houses. Places in Strathfield are doing $1,250 a week. Places in the inner west, in the CBD, they're doing $1,250 a week. But a normal 4-bedroom house in still an expensive area of Parramatta is doing $650, $700 a week. Now, we asked the question, how many houses are there with $1 million plus price tags? In New South Wales, it's infinite. They're all almost $1 million. I think the average price point now is 1.65, if I'm not mistaken, in metropolitan Sydney. So what negative gearing allows people to do is to provide rent at a fair rate that Australians can afford without compromising their own family situation, right? So let's think about that. I'm going to provide you, Jess, with a house that you can afford. $1 million gets you a shack in Blacktown. That $1 million shack in Blacktown, you can't afford me to pay more than $550, $600 a week, and that's what the market demands. And I'm sorry for those critics out there, but the market does demand rentals. It's not just people trying to buy that are struggling, it is renters that are struggling. So if I give that to you at $500 a week, I'm now losing $500 a week. If we do those numbers, it's $2,000 a month, $24,000 a year, for rough numbers, a little bit more than that. So what's the incentive for me giving you housing, accommodation, shelter at a rate that you can afford? It's that I'm losing $24,000. So if I'm giving the government my taxes, which I am, then I should be able to offset that loss, which happens in every company. No company is paying tax on a loss. They're rebating that. The new buildings out there help developers make sense. Sorry, not developers. Help investors make sense as to why they're providing this resource. If it wasn't in demand, right, then no investor would make money. But they have to provide it at a fair market rate to give people opportunity to have shelter. And that's the only way they can do it is with negative gearing and depreciation. So all investors should be looking at new buildings. We always thought that all investors should be looking at new buildings because of the stamp duty, because of the capital growth from the building on a vacant lot. We always thought that was the best course regardless. But now, even more so, it's the only way to go. And negative gearing is critical to that. Sorry, all you haters out there who think it's not viable and that people shouldn't be rewarded. But Lord have mercy, to buy the house, they've paid tax 1,000 times. They've saved, they've compromised, they haven't gone out, they've sold their cars, they've sold their collectibles. They've done everything right to earn the right to somehow make some kind of wealth. What are we coming to in a world where you don't want to see people who've worked hard prosper? Lord have mercy, guys. There has to be a part in you that goes, good on them. Guys, we are getting thousands upon thousands upon thousands of views a day. Please like, subscribe. If you're loving the content, press the notification button. Jump on board. More free advice just for you.